When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
If you haven't already rated and reviewed the Single Tracks podcast in your podcast app, now's the time to do it. We're randomly selecting listener reviews to read on the show, and if we choose yours, you'll get a free Single Tracks hat in the mail. Hit pause right now, write a quick review, and then listen to future episodes to find out if you won yourself a hat. Happy trails. Hey everybody, welcome to the Single Tracks podcast. My name is Jeff, and today my guest is Simon Lawton. Simon is the founder of Fluidride, which is a world-class mountain bike instructional school that offers both online courses and in-person clinics around the world. We first spoke with Simon on the podcast in the summer of 2019, and it was a lot of fun, so we're stoked to have you back. Thanks for joining us, Simon.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. I'm excited to be back.
Right on. Let's start with the question about how business has been for 2020. You know, an important part of what you do, obviously, is putting on mountain bike skills classes and clinics. So how have you adapted your business during COVID-19?
You know, I think everybody's been for a pretty wild ride over the last 8 months or so, and I'm not immune to that either. And so obviously, we had the shutdown, which was a big deal. And during the shutdown, we also do tours, and we had a tour scheduled to Finale Ligure in Italy, and obviously Italy was hit the hardest. So that was the first thing was the cancellation of that tour. And then with the shutdown, you know, I had just come back from Mexico. I'd been back only a couple weeks. We'd been doing clinics for 2 weeks, and you know, I was living in a pretty small town in Mexico where I am now, and I hadn't really even heard of COVID, and I got home to America, and everybody's like, COVID. I'm like, well, what's this? And 2 weeks later, my business was closed, and I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And that's when I pivoted to working really hard on the online school, and the timing of that actually worked out really well. The school was still small, and it wasn't really able to kind of fill the void financially, you know, for our in-person classes, but Linnea Rook, who has since become our COO, had just started volunteering to help me with social media. And because she was stuck at home, she was putting in about 40 hours a week after her normal job every night.
Wow. Just
to help me with the online school. And she has become, you know, a really, really big part of my business since then. So we basically pivoted by pushing our online school as hard as we could, and we made a huge amount of progress with the school, but it still wasn't really enough to fill that financial void. And then, you know, we heard that things were going to open up in mid-June, so we were closed in, I think, mid-April, all of May, and then until mid-June. And so, you know, we kind of started up with a kind of a conservative schedule in mid-June, thinking, you know, like, are people going to come out to the park? What's this going to be like? And oh my gosh, we got run over by business. We did, I think, 240% of our normal business of in-person instruction, including the shutdown time.
Wow.
So what we really saw, and I think a lot of other people can attest to this, is just the growth of the sport. I mean, there are no bikes left available. Our more introductory classes were selling 5-to-1 over what they normally sell. So it was incredible. I mean, we went from thinking, you know, okay, how are we going to survive this thing to, oh my God, how are we going to survive this thing?
Yeah. Well, were people concerned though? I mean, like, were people kind of, they wanted to sign up, or were they worried about like sort of precautions that were in place or anything? Or were these like kind of the gung-ho people who are like, I'm going to get out there and do this?
You know, it was a combination of the two types of people. I mean, I think it was really just kind of everybody had been inside so long, and they were looking for a way to get outside. And it was kind of just before the news that being outside was a lot safer than being inside. It was kind of right around the time where that was kind of becoming the emerging science. And so that was a good thing. We put our policies online of, you know, we limited the size of our classes, and we set out cones where everybody would stand during the talking portions of class. And then we really monitored the way people went through our skill drill zones and through the trails and that sort of thing to make sure that there was spacing. And, you know, we taught, I don't know how many people we taught, thousands of people over the summer, and we never had any problems that I know of with COVID. So, and we had no complaints from anybody saying like, your policies didn't seem to work, or, people were too close. Everybody was really respectful and kept their distance. Some people wore masks, some people didn't, because we were able to keep quite a bit of distance. Mm-hmm. And so I would say if anything, it was like therapy for people. Like, people weren't just excited to learn to ride bikes. They were like, oh my gosh, I'm outside, I'm breathing fresh air, I'm learning something. And so it was kind of like almost this additional outlet for people that was just such a gift for us to be able to give and to watch it, and like to be there with the group. I remember saying to the first group, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not in my bedroom anymore, because I live alone. I'm like, here I am with this group of people who are excited to learn. So for me, that was really, really exciting. And so we had a huge summer. I think we have 6 mountain bike instructors now. So we have riders out, teaching private classes, people assisting my classes, other people teaching classes. So we've really expanded our in-person instruction. We even now have an instructor in Los Angeles and a couple coming on in Jackson Hole, Wyoming area. So we've got some good expansion underway in terms of the in-person instruction, and the shutdown period really allowed us to make a lot of headway on our online school. And even though it didn't result immediately in a lot of subscriptions, now that our main teaching season is over, we're way further ahead of the school, and now our subscriptions are really taking off, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff happening there. Along the way through summer, another thing that allowed us to be so effective with our instruction was that we weren't in the French Alps for a month like we usually are in August. So it was my first year not operating my tours in Chamonix, and instead of being in beautiful green Chamonix, we got hit by a bunch of smoke from here on the West Coast. So it was kind of like one thing after another, but it was really actually, while it was challenging, it was actually I hate to say this, I know a lot of people suffered, but it was a really rewarding year for us. It really was, because we just kept trying, and we kept pushing, and we kept pivoting, and we kept just doing our best, and the results just kept coming back in a really positive way for us. So that was, it was cool. I think it's going to make everything seem easier in the future. That's my hope.
Yeah. Well, that's surprising, but I guess also not surprising. I mean, I think a lot of us in the bike world kind of, experienced the same thing, where initially we were like, oh no, what's going to happen? And then we saw this demand for bikes, but still I am surprised that, in-person skills training, was as popular as it was, and that people didn't, let that stop them. They weren't afraid to come out and give it a try. So,
well, nobody was more surprised than me. I'll tell you that. I could not, but I was not prepared. I thought, we'll throw a couple classes out there, and they sold out in minutes. And I was like, what is going on? And we just kept adding, and it didn't matter how many we added, they sold out. It was really astounding, and just how excited people were. And the thing that I think that kind of caught me off guard, here were all these people on like garage sale bikes once all the bikes were sold out. Mm. And they kept coming back to the park, and they kept taking classes. And they like it. It didn't seem like anybody kind of tried it and didn't like it. It seemed like everybody was just into it. And I really think the sport just like doubled in size. Like, I just think we're going to see a permanent, massive expanse in the sport from COVID.
Yeah, one of our contributors noted that, in the past, when the bike industry talks about like, how are we going to grow the sport? And we talk about the challenges, like, oh, well, you got to be in shape, and, you gotta spend a lot of money on equipment. These are the things that are keeping people from riding. But, with COVID now, it turns out what was really stopping people from biking more was, college football and, going out to restaurants and like all the other stuff that suddenly when you're not doing those things, you're like, biking, that's next on my list of things that I want to do. It's a lot of fun. And, it may not be the priority for a lot of people, but, once the things that are priorities go away, biking's up there.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I think it is the new priority for a lot of these people. I mean, we had people dusting off bikes they hadn't pulled out of their garage in 20 years, so it was really, it was a really cool thing to see, and I think a really healthy thing for a lot of people, because like you say, a lot of other people's interests were maybe a little bit more idle. So to get them out in the woods and get them out on bikes, get them exercising, I think it was just the perfect thing for people's bodies, but also for their minds after kind of being forced to sit still.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when we talked back in 2019, you were launching Fluidride online, and given the current circumstances, it does seem like the timing was good. So what have you learned over the last year and a half of offering these online skills classes?
Well, it's been nothing but learning, I'll be honest, Jeff. I mean, I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to anything that I do, really. I just literally make stuff up and just do my best, and I'm super passionate about it. I didn't really have any experience with online teaching, to be honest. And my initial thought was, I bought a 70-inch touchscreen monitor, and I thought, okay, teach everything you teach in all of your classes. And so I, had these videos and kind of, this giant screen, and I created a studio in my house, and basically I taught all the skills that were contained in all my classes. And I kind of thought, okay, this can just sit as a static school and people will pay for it and it's going to be great. And then I realized, people consume content pretty quickly, and there needs to be something ongoing. And it's not the same as being in a class because you're not getting that direct feedback from me. I mean, the information was all there. And so what I learned was that constant updating of content was really the key, and that's really what we've pivoted to now. One of the biggest things that's helped us, our numbers have grown 100% in the last couple of months, and that's maybe partly due to the season and some of the shutdowns in the U.S. But a lot of it is due to some other teaching modalities we brought in. We have a new series called Practice Like a Pro, which is actually our COO, Linnea Rook, who is a regional pro enduro rider and downhill rider. It's me teaching her and her going through the process of learning with two goals in mind. One, to break her record down quite a well-known track in our area called Predator, where I think she has the second fastest time behind Jill Kentner. And her other goal is to ride this Black Diamond jump run called Semper Dirticus at Dookie Hill Park with style. She wants to actually be able to throw. She wants to be able to throw whips and all that kind of stuff. And so we've had a weekly episode. We've been pushing out like a 4 or 5 minute episode every week on YouTube, and then creating content for those people who maybe are sitting at home and don't have money, and we want to make sure that they're included. They're not really teasers; they're just kind of like mini episodes, and then we have the full episodes available on Fluidride Online. And it's been fascinating. Like when we first launched it a few months ago, we'd go to the park and so many people had their phones out and they were practicing in all the same places that she was practicing, and they were so inspired. I think it really kind of worked well because most women would love to ride like her, most men would love to ride like her. So I think it appeals to a lot of people. It seems more attainable to watch her riding than to maybe watch like a top pro riding where you're like, yeah, well, that's great for you. You're top pro. Right. So, and to see her before and afters were really incredible. We have a lot of stuff coming up. We've worked with Portia Murdoch, who was the 2018 National Enduro Champion, and we just made an hour-long episode that it's really incredible, the before and afters from that. So some of the more practical stuff of seeing like how, not just what I teach, but how I teach it and how I actually go back and forth with the student and what the corrections are that we make, and then how effective it is, because the before and afters are absolutely incredible as we're doing these things. So now we're adding in more of these kinds of things. We're doing a beginner series where we're starting with two ladies who are absolute beginner riders down here in Mexico. And we also have one with a series that we've done 5 or 6 episodes that haven't been launched yet, with 2 young ladies who want to ride the World Cup. So there's the 13-year-old girl who wants to be the U.S. national downhill champion, and then her 15-year-old sister wants to qualify for Junior World Cups this next year. And so we've been working with them, and they're both absolutely astounding riders. And the amount they were able to learn in the first 5 sessions was really cool. So what we're trying to really do is, bring in beginners, bring in people of different ages. I'm doing a series with a kid who's 8 years old, really great rider, so I'm going to follow him from age 8 to age 9. So kind of trying to make something for everybody in the family. If you tune in, maybe you're a beginner and there's going to be something for you to like really connect with. So we tried to bring a little bit of like the entertainment value in, rather than just kind of like technical knowledge, which is what I tend to be. I think I'm a fun teacher in person, but like being in front of a screen, it comes across a little bit like as technical knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so actually having somebody there to teach has been really, really cool. And then one of the big things we're doing right now, and Linnea's working super hard on this, is we're about to launch classes in association with each of our content pieces. So say, for instance, there's a how to ride berm turns. Mm-hmm. Rather than just watching the 10-minute video or 20-minute video on how to ride berm turns, it puts you through a whole class, and it's actually got like a progress bar where it's like monitoring your progress. And then at the end, you can, there's some, on a lot of them, there's an at-home drill you can do to kind of practice the movements. It depends on what the particular skill is. And then we also have on-trail ones. And so we'll have a video or GIFs or photos with arrows and that sort of thing showing what you should look like. And then you can put your own image on screen and compare yourself. And you can keep practicing that until you get it as perfect as you can. And if you don't get it to where you like it, you'll be able to enlist our help with remote instruction. And right now we actually have a really cool special that's been driving a lot of people our way, which is a $99 one-year annual subscription, which comes with one video feedback session. So people send me a video, I mark up the video, give them feedback, and send it back to them. And so that's something we're starting to create now, is this opportunity starting in January to buy packages of feedback videos. So for the people who don't live near me and take my classes, they can get feedback. For the people who do live near me and do take classes, they'll be able to get a quick check-in for less money than taking a class. So those are kind of the things we have going on right now that are really exciting, and the growth we're seeing is incredible, and the feedback is absolutely incredible. And one of my favorite things is we just bought like a new way of, I don't know, what is this, some sort of plug-in, and when you click on it, you can see the maps you can see the map all over the world and all the different flags, and just to see kind of like how many people all around the world are taking advantage of what we're creating, and being able to share that worldwide is really, really cool. And for me, like, my goal has always been to improve as many people's lives as possible, regardless of what I'm doing, whether it's mountain biking or teaching yoga or teaching the other things that I teach. And, within that, I don't want to exclude people just because of money. So we have our free stuff on YouTube, for, I don't know, about $9 a month. Buying an annual, you can be on our online channel. If you have a little more money, you can do one of our group classes in person. If you have a little more money, you can do private instruction or come on one of our tours. So there's, really the hope is that there's something for everybody to help them ride more safely and to help them ride better and to just enjoy the sport more.
Yeah. That's cool to hear that, you've found some new ways to make it a little bit more interactive, I guess you would say, like being able to send in video for feedback. And then I love the idea of the progress bar as well. Because like you're saying, this isn't Netflix. This isn't like you sign up and you watch the videos and then, you watch them all, you binge watch, and then at the end, you're an awesome rider. Like, you really have to take the time, like, slow it down, focus on one skill and, get kind of the basics, get an understanding of what you're trying to do. And then you have to go out and practice it. And that's really where the time is. The time is not spent in front of your screen. It's, you're only going to progress if you're out there doing it.
That's absolutely true. I mean, Linnea, who runs the company and is a regular student of mine, she decided last winter that during COVID that she was going to learn to ride wheelies. And she can crank out a wheelie for about a half a mile probably now.
Wow.
Yeah, and she said it took her 6 months and she worked every day. And so when people come up to her and say, "Hey, can you show me how to wheelie?" And she's like, "I can show you the basics, and then you can go and work like 1 or 2 hours a day for 6 months if you want to ride a wheelie." And I think that there's a lot of stuff on YouTube and a lot of stuff online where it's like, learn to manual in 5 minutes, and it's kind of like, well, you could learn maybe some of the techniques about it in 5 minutes, but to your point, Jeff, yeah, it takes a lot of practice, and that's the part that's really up to the rider. And that's the part, that's the fun part, actually, because you're riding a bike, but you can get good information online, but then you definitely need to go out and give it a try more than once.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned too that, there's a lot of new riders that are out there and that you're kind of trying to create content for people who are like brand new. I mean, I imagine before kind of with your in-person classes and even the people who would sign up for the online version, these are people who have been mountain biking for a while, and they, get to the point where they say, well, I want to go to the next level or whatever. So how have you adapted? Like, what are the types of skills that someone who, like, maybe they just got their first mountain bike, this summer, what are the things that you start with them?
So we're about to start filming down here in Mexico. We're about to start filming this beginner series, and it's all going to, or at least the first number of episodes are just filmed in the town square in the small town I live in Todos Santos, and just flat pavement. Like, what is a dropper post? How does a dropper post work? Mm-hmm. Which brake is your front brake? Which brake is your back brake? How do you shift a bike? How do you do basic climbing? So it's going to be really, how do you set up the height of your seat post, given that you have a dropper post? So these riders, the two riders I've chosen, have never ridden before, and I haven't taught them anything leading up to this. And we're going to film it in a couple of weeks. And they're both really, really excited. They keep saying, "Come out, teach me a little bit." It's like, nope, you got to show up blind. I mean, I want a true beginner here. So they're both really good sports, and they're both really athletic. So I think they'll pick it up. But it's going to be all brand new to them, and that's the whole idea. Because what's happening right now is, if you're lucky enough to be able to find a bike, it gets shipped to your house. A lot of times, if you're ordering it direct, and you're like, okay, what is all this stuff and how do I use it? It's a little intimidating. So you're totally right. Like, we're starting at our beginner point has changed to brand new beginner. And I think that's really important right now, because we want to make sure that people who are just picking up a bike or just dusting off a 20-year-old bike kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. That's the front brake. That's the back brake. I mean, there's some pretty simple things that turn out to be pretty important, especially with powerful brakes these days.
Yeah. Well, what about for beginners too? What about the soft skills like trail etiquette? Obviously biking is not the only thing that's booming right now. I mean, around where I live, dog walking seems to be more popular than ever, and hiking and, trail running. And, the trails are packed with people and not just bikers. So does that fit in with your instructional material at all? Like these soft skills? And if not, like, where do people learn that stuff?
That's a really good question. It does. It absolutely does fit in. So I'm lucky enough to teach in a park where we have mostly one-way trails and that sort of thing. The etiquette that I teach there initially is that on green and blue trails, you always yield to the slower rider. And then on black diamond trails, if you just getting good enough to get onto one and you hear a rider coming up behind you, if you can safely get off the trail, you should, because they might need the speed to clear an upcoming jump or to do something, that's coming up. And so that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that, like, a lot of beginners will feel like they're in somebody's way on a green trail. Like, they'll say, sorry. I'm like, hey, this is your trail. It's totally fine. Take your time, and like, so we teach all of the people within the class to understand that, look, we're going to be on these trails today. If you come up on, on somebody slower, don't be frustrated, and just, give them some positive feedback. And just by hearing you, they'll probably pull over and let you by. Yep. So that's one thing in terms of etiquette. Like, the other thing is, where we do have shared trails, is just letting people know that it's really important as mountain bikers that we take the high road, that we're the ones who stop for the hikers, that if a dog starts to follow you, that you stop and make sure it reconnects with its owner, that we are the stewards and the ambassadors, and that we always are the ones setting a good example. So that's really important. And then it actually goes a little further than that when we start to travel. So the first night, that people come into our trips in Chamonix, or the trips we're going to be having here in Mexico or wherever, is just to kind of educate them on the etiquette of the area, and the way you treat the people, and the things you do and don't do, and the things that we take for granted in America that are different in other places. Like, for example, in Europe, Europeans are not super noisy at the dinner table, and you might get a group of 15 very excited Americans sitting at the dinner table having a few cocktails after a really epic day of riding, and suddenly it's a pretty raucous environment. The rest of the restaurant is just going, oh my gosh, what's going on over there? So sometimes we have to have a little talk with people and just say, like, hey, it's totally cool to be excited, but, like, just try to keep your voices down and notice that it is different here in this country. Like, different people behave differently in different countries. And so I think it's really important when you go to new places to respect people's trails, to respect the etiquette on the trails, but also to respect the etiquette of the lifestyle, in the location you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess trails too. I mean, you kind of touched on that. A big part of it is the sort of person to person interactions that we experience on the trails, but even, taking care of the trails themselves, not skidding and all the stuff that like we take for granted and think like, oh, of course, we know how to do that. But I imagine people don't know that stuff.
That brings up a great point. So like when I teach jumping, one of the first things I teach is I show them where the lip of the jump is. And I say, like, if you're looking at a jump, you never stand on this.
Right.
If you're looking at this berm turn, you don't stand on top of the berm. Like realize that like tons and tons of hours of work went into all of this, and these are works of art. And so they're not just like things that just happen to be out here. They're things that people have created and taken great pain to create. And especially like, we had a really dry summer, when the summer months come, you have to be even more careful about the way you treat the trails. If you step on the top of a jump or you step on the top of a berm, you might just completely destroy it, and so I think that that's really important as well, is to kind of educate people as to the etiquette around the builders. Like if you see a builder, don't be like, oh, hey, crap, this trail's closed, and you're yelling at the builder. It's like, hey, thanks for working on the trail. Like don't be angry because your trail's closed because there's a builder making it better for you. Be thankful. Ask if you can help.
Right.
If you have time, and if you don't have time, just please say thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I happen to know a lot of friends, a lot of non-mountain bike friends who, maybe they used to bike. They have like an old bike sitting in the garage that's gathering dust, and they're the ones who are getting back into the sport and getting back out there. Do you think certain mountain bike skills get rusty if you don't use them? Or is there truth to that saying, that it's just like riding a bike, like you never forget?
The balance part is just like riding a bike. Like I think you get back on your bike and you're like, oh, hey, look, I'm riding a bike again. Cool.
Yeah, I can still do it.
But exactly. But there are skills that get rusty really, really quickly. And even with the world's top riders, so even with the pros who I teach, I talk a lot in my teachings about foot dominance. Really people turn better in one direction and they turn in the other direction. And even with somebody, at the pro level, even at the high top pro level, they'll come and I'll clean up their, like, let's say their front foot turn, which you can learn more about on our YouTube channel at Fluidride Mountain Bike Instruction, or on our Fluidride online. Like if you're working on like their front foot turn, and then all of a sudden they come back and like their foot dominance is taken over, and they're turning in both directions with their back foot. Like they're just turning. Most commonly, people will be right foot dominant, and they'll tend to turn right and left off their right foot, which is incorrect. And so that's one of the things that I would say that comes back to haunt people, is like, oh, I'm doing that again, and I get really high level riders who come back to me consistently for a check-in and for some video analysis, just to see that what they're doing is correct, because our body's own biases are so hard to change. That's when they're habitual, right? That's what habits are. The other thing that I think is something, maybe not so much for the highest level riders, but for the general population, is this psychological tendency to want to move rearward on the bicycle. And almost everything we teach is about moving forward into terrain. So moving forward from the kneecaps into terrain. And it's really dangerous to move rearward on the bike in general. Like you might see a bike go down a steep descent with a good rider. It might look like the rider got back, but really the bike moved forward. And it's a really important distinction. And so what we see a lot with people is they're like, hey, man, I took a class with you and I was feeling so good. And like, I don't know what's wrong with my riding. And they come out and they're either like really stiff, which can pull you forward when the bike wants to roll down something, or they're just like an inch or two too far back. You really want to stand centered over the bottom bracket in general. And even if you think about like a bike on a really steep descent, when it rolls down a steep descent and the saddle moves out in front of you, it doesn't mean you've moved behind the saddle. It means the saddle's moved in front of you. And if you actually look at the rider, what you'll notice is that the rider will still be stacked up over the bottom bracket. It's just that the saddle's now moved to a different position relative to the rider. So a lot of people will premeditatively move rearward out of fear. And that's probably like, if you watch Friday Fails or something like that on Pink Bike, it's 80%. people moving back too much too soon, or their brain saying, "Oh, be careful, get back," right? Which and I hear like parents coaching their kids all the time, like, "Just get your butt back, just get your butt back," and it's like the absolute opposite of what you want to do on a bike. I mean, there are moments where, like off the edge of a drop, where you shift your hips rearward and things like that. There are moments where the saddle moves out in front of you, and it looks like your butt's back, but we're not really pushing the bike out in front of us. We're not really pushing our butt back. Mm-hmm. We're staying centered over our own legs for the bottom bracket, which is the control mechanism of the bicycle. So I would say that those are the two things, like the foot dominance for cornering, and then this desire to get back. Our little mantra that we use is move forward and relax. And moving forward means move forward at the knees. And that just reminds you to move forward toward like a rock garden or roots or things like that, rather than moving backward. And then the relax is relaxing the upper body. Because if your upper body's tense and you're trying to hang on really tight, the bike can't jockey. I mean, think about it like a horse, right? Like you want to stay over the stirrups. Mm-hmm. That's your move forward. So your knees are over your toes. And you want to relax because you need to let the reins move back and forth and let the horse run. So it's very similar on a bike. If you try to hang on too tight, you're going to do everything the bike does. If you get back too far, your arms are going to become fully extended, and at some point you're going to be pulled forward, and that's going to scare you, and it's going to both make you get back more and tense up more. So it's this kind of like, this self-fulfilling thing that just gets worse and worse and worse, and then you come back to a class and you're like, oh, that's what I was doing. Yeah, I was totally getting back, and I was getting tense, and because I was getting back, I was getting tense, and because I was tense, I was getting back. And, it's just this loop, and your riding just gets worse and worse and worse, and pretty soon you just say, oh, I'm just not a good rider, and really the adjustment is so quick and so simple with people. It's really cool to watch people have that kind of aha moment of like, wow, that works, that just moving forward to the knees. We have a ton of stuff, again, on our YouTube channel at Fluidride Mountain Bike Instruction, and on Fluidride Online. We have even more about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the things I took away from our first conversation was just, not that reaction to get back on the bike when you're doing something steep or you're coming into something technical. And it's one of those things that I continue to work on and have to tell myself. And I almost wonder if for me personally, it's, just because I've been riding for a long time, like way before dropper posts. And that was kind of like to get in the right position, you kind of had to go like up and over your seat post. And so, I've just got used to that being so far back. And now it's like, wait, I have all this room. Like I can get exactly where I need to be without, over exaggerating that.
Yeah. In your introduction to your question, you actually brought that up, and I should have addressed it, and I will now, which is what you said, you've got your friends dusting off their bikes out of their garage after 20 years. Okay, so those bikes have, if you look where your hands are in relation to the front axle, they're in front of the front axle. Our hands
long stems.
Are long stems, steep head angles. So on bikes like that, we just had to get our butt back and kind of hope for the best. They just weren't really very well designed. And so when we do have people come to classes on those bicycles, we explain to them that there are instances where they can move forward a little bit in gentle terrain. Mm-hmm. But like when they go and get steep, if they really want to hurl themselves down something on a 25-year-old bike, then they just need to get their butt back, And so that advice was not incorrect.
Yeah.
25 years ago, that advice is incorrect now on a modern bicycle. And I would say that, any bicycle made in the last 10 years or so, the newer techniques apply more so. And so, yeah, for sure, Jeff, like there is some truth to that for those of us who've been riding a long, long time, and maybe we habituated ourselves to certain movements, on bicycles that were made in 1986.
Right.
It takes a little bit of updating, and really there is a lot of room on modern bikes to move, and there really is a nice sweet spot, and it's much easier to maintain your space over the bottom bracket. And then just the idea of how much further behind the front axle your hands are is really interesting when you think about it. Like if you think about being on flat ground on an old cross-country bike, your hands are in front of the front axle. So you go off the curb and you almost feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go over the handlebars, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now our hands are like on a modern enduro bike are 4 or 5 inches behind the front axle. So you have to get on a pretty steep pitch before your hands even line up with the axle, let alone get in front of the front axle.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that I think, anyway, as a coach, that has become that is a stabilizing force of the layout of modern bicycle. I would say, suspensions come a long way, brakes have come a long way, like all that stuff. But really, angles and lengths and all the engineering that's gone into bikes is really what's changed them the most.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah, that it's all about the geometry now too. I mean, a lot of us talk about that, like, oh, bikes are so great right now. And yeah, a lot of it is just they're easier to ride. I mean, they let us do more things and go faster and, ride more technical terrain. And a lot of it does, like you said, come down to the geometry of them. So you recently made a move to spend half the year in Baja, Mexico. So you kind of mentioned this, but where are you exactly and what led you to make that move?
Oh, man. Todos Santos, and I absolutely love it. So Todos Santos is about an hour north of Cabo San Lucas. So Cabo is on the very southern tip of Baja. So I'm about an hour from the southern tip of Baja and about 1 million miles away from Cabo at the same time, even though it's an hour away, because I live in a small town of about 7,000 people, maybe, I'm just guessing here, but maybe 1,000 expats and 6,000 Mexican nationals. And it's what's called a Pueblo Mágico. So it's kind of like one of the historic towns that still has its roots firmly intact. It's a beautiful little town with a little town, typical Mexican town square, and small downtown. I live right downtown on Main Street. Great beaches. The beaches are so empty and so beautiful. Like, I didn't know anything like this possibly existed anywhere. Yeah. I'll go to the beach some days and walk for miles and not see anybody.
Wow.
It's incredible. But at the same time, you can go downtown and listen to live music. And it's not like a crazy party scene, but there's always something going on in town. There are all these surprising little courtyards once you get to know town. These little courtyards, you kind of go in through a door and go in a back corridor, and all of a sudden you pop into an outdoor courtyard inside a building, with a band playing and people dancing, and it's really lively and really a surprising little town. And so I came down here. So I was historically for 5 years or so living in Thailand on a small island where I met my dog. And and I was teaching a little bit. Well, I was mostly a student of free diving, but I started teaching breath hold diving at the end. And I really liked it there, but it was very foreign. It was very far from home, and I couldn't take my dog. Even though my dog was from Thailand, I couldn't take her back there with me because there's just so many like wild dogs around. And so I've been searching for a place in America. I was driving around SoCal and Arizona. I'm like, well, I gotta find a winter home. It's not necessarily for teaching. It's just that I did the ski thing for many, many years, and I'm just kind of like I'm just ready for sunshine, And so I started driving south, and I had my dog with me, and I was like, hey, you can go to Mexico, So we just kept driving and came down. I went to La Paz first, which is the capital of BCS, so Baja California South, basically. So which is the southernmost state of Baja. It's the least populous of the 30 or so states in Mexico. So we went to the capital first, and we stayed there for about 6 weeks. And it's a big city for down there. The biggest city is 250,000 people. This is where I ended up here. It's one of the largest towns, and it's less than 7,000 people. So I tried La Paz, thinking I'd want to be, on the Gulf Coast so I could free dive and do things like that. Not really a surfer yet, just getting started. And so I thought, well, what's the Pacific Coast going to hold for me? Is that really going to be where I want to be? And I drove over to this little town and just immediately met people in the yoga community, rode some of the local trails, and it was just like, this is home, this is where I want to live. And so then I started kind of investigating how I could put on tours, and we actually launched a bunch of tours and sold a bunch of spots, and we're all ready to go because, COVID was kind of waning a little bit toward the end of summer. And then, it just hit back hard. So we just canceled all our tours. And so now I've just been super busy helping dig trails, working with some of the people from town, which has been really cool. Dave Thompson from Over the Edge Sports has been super helpful in kind of like showing me around and showing me the trails he's built. This is kind of his legacy, was to make this into a mountain biking town. He's built some beautiful, flowy, kind of green and blue trails. And of course, with my downhill roots, I'm like, okay, where's the fall line? So he's been helping me find spots, and I've been busy digging, which has been wonderful. Because I mean, for me, I've been an advocate of the sport. Helping to create a Colonnade Park, which was the first urban mountain bike park in America, and then helping to create Doofy Hill Park. But I did the political work on those, and I literally never lifted a shovel because I was so busy in meetings.
Yeah.
And to be able to come here and have somebody else who's done the political work, and they're like, "We just need you to lift a shovel," I'm like, "Perfect, I can do that." So I've been getting up at like 4 a.m. and hiking up into the mountains, and I've been making some nice black diamond terrain here, and I'm really excited to share it with people and share it with the town, and to bring bring some money into the town, more or less, with people who are respectful, who are fit, who aren't just coming here to party. They're not coming here to be in Cabo. They're coming here to ride bikes, and so trying to make Todos Santos more of a mountain bike town is kind of like one of my key goals here. Right now we have the Sierra Madre Trail, which is a 10-mile cross-country loop. It's got a couple pretty nice descents on it for sure, just really, really flowy. And there's a very scenic loop called the Old Port Loop, which mostly goes through private land, which is going to be developed, but it's open for people to ride through. And it's actually open in many areas for building. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. And there's some people from Bellingham who have spent a lot of time. I'm not sure the name of the area, but it's out the other end of town by the La Pastora surf area. And they've built a lot of trails, and that's just starting to be developed now. So I think they've lost some of the trails that they created. But it's definitely growing here, and then you've got basically an hour away from here, you go to La Ventana, which is kind of the kiteboarding capital of the area. It's directly due east on the Gulf Coast. And they have beautiful flowy trails.
I was actually there earlier this year riding in La Ventana and rode a couple of the trail systems there. Yeah, really, really surprising to find that. And, for at least some of it, it seemed like, most of the trail names and signs were in English. And so I got the impression that a lot of this trail building and mountain biking is being driven by the expat community. Has that been your experience there, or are you seeing like more locals actually starting to get involved?
Absolutely. I would say it's the expat community, and then locals becoming more involved. Dave Thompson has lived in Mexico for at least a decade. I know that. But he's been the one who's kind of been behind the big push here, like with Sierra Madre Trail in this town. I know there are a group of expats. I can't remember exactly who's building in La Ventana, but I know it's a pretty organized group. As you saw, there's nice signage, and they even kind of like call out some of the names of the foliage. And the trails are in beautiful shape there. I mean, the surprising thing is they're not really dusty like you think they are. Considering there's no rain. And then in Los Barriles, which is just a bit south of there, I know it's a different group yet. And then there's also a bike park in San Jose del Cabo, which is where the Cabo airport is. There's a little bike park down there. So if you get on Trail Forks and you just kind of enter Baja, you'll just see southern Baja is chock full of trails, some of which are better than others, most of which are green or blue if they're descents, and some of the black diamonds like on Trail Forks are actually climbs. And so I've been wanting to make some more fall line stuff, so I've been working on a couple of trails that have some pretty significant vertical to them, and some pretty technical trail features. So I'm working on some of that stuff right now, and then also working with some landowners up in the Sierra, up in the mountains, like the real mountains, which are bigger. I mean, some of the mountains here on the coast are about 1,500 feet or more tall, but then you look inland, 40-minute drive away, and the peaks are probably 6,000 feet tall. And there's some families who've owned land out there for generations, and I've been able to get some introductions out there as well to figure out, the possibility for maybe leasing a bit of land, because there are roads that go right to the top, but they're all private roads, and those people are looking for ways to make money. And having a trail or two come down through the forest, I think could be a pretty sustainable way for them to create something, where things can be hard to create because there's just not a lot around out there.
Yeah. And when I was there, we stayed at a place called Rancho Cacachilas, which is But again, one of these like privately owned ranches, it's become like a tourism spot. And yeah, they've invested a ton in building trails there, using machines and teaching a lot of, the local folks, all the latest in trail building and things. And they've been able to build a really amazing network of trails. Though again, it is privately owned, and, it's not like here in the US anyway, where most trails are kind of fair game. I mean, this is, for their guests. And
yeah, I think that's one of Christy Walton's places. I'm not positive about that.
Yes, it is.
It is. Yep. Okay. So, again, the Walton family has been getting really into mountain biking, which is cool. There's another small town, like it's a very small town of like 100 people, but I think they've got a zone out there as well. But like you say, those are private zones. I think you have to hire guides to ride through there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think at Rancho Cacachillas, yeah.
Yeah, so I've never done that. So what I'm trying to create is just more like the American model of trails that you can find on trail forks, trails that anybody can utilize. And then, like for the tours that I'm putting on down here, I'm trying to enlist the help of as many locals as I can, whether it's for the guiding, the cooking, driving, all that kind of stuff. The same sort of thing we do like when we're in Europe. We're not the guides in Europe. We have French guides in France, and we have French and Italian guides when we're in Italy, and we have trips planned to South America where we have a South American guide down there who leads it. And so wherever I go, I just like to respect, the people. It's not like I'm here to take away their land and their jobs. I'm trying to like help them use the land in a sustainable way to create jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you think Baja has the potential to become a well-known mountain bike destination? I mean, it sounds like there are a lot of opportunities there already, but do you see it becoming more popular with mountain bikers?
Absolutely. Some of the trails, like just the little ones that I've etched in, I'm like, okay, I can see this being really popular with a lot of my friends. I think some of it was, necessarily done, at medium grades, just like, most trail builders know, if you build trails that are flatter, they take less maintenance, and there's definitely something to be said for that. You can have really beautiful flow trails, and I love riding those kinds of trails. But then I also like the challenge of maybe some steeper trails and some jump lines and things like that. And then also creation of public skill parks. And so I'm working with two private landowners right now to try to get something like, very mini version of what I helped create at Doofy Hill Park, where you can have some drops and some jumps and some places for the kids to ride. And I want it to be free for the public and just kind of an outlet. Like living here for me is really exciting. I mean, there's surfing. I can go and I can drive a little bit in free dive. I can go to the marine reserve. I can do all these amazing things. But if you're just a kid who grows up here, you're like, it's sunny and hot, and I don't have anything to do, And so just realizing that, one of our goals here, actually, the coffee shop I'm sitting in here, Doce 40, they let me use a private room here to do this podcast with you, and I'm just looking outside at some of the land they have around here, and I've actually been speaking with the owners about making a pump track for kids here and that sort of thing. So I've just been reaching out to community everywhere I go and speaking to people, and they've all been just like, wonderful to talk to. I don't have anything set in stone yet, but I've had amazing conversations, and I'm super optimistic that it's going to lead to great things. And I do plan to be here. I do plan to spend half my year here on an ongoing basis. And so people can expect to be able to come down here and ride with me, do tours with me, do classes with me. So we are creating zones for teaching the skills that we teach in other places. So you come down and do like maybe 1 week would be like a skills plus riding. Another one might just be like a ride tour of whole southern Baja with a bunch of day trips, like some van trips, and then also a bunch of riding in this area. And also, obviously, there are just a lot of other things to do. There are two really prime surf spots within 10 minutes of downtown, and just tons of great beaches and really cool yoga studio. So we might do some stuff that's combined with yoga and that sort of stuff. So we got a lot of opportunities here, a lot of options. I mean, it's interesting when my friends come down here to ride, they're like, oh yeah, we're we made some trails. I can't wait. I've been in the rain, you know, and they get down here and like on day 4, I'm like, are you going to get your bike out of the box? Right. They're like, oh yeah, that biking thing. That's right. I forgot. You know, they're so taken with like the culture and the food and the people and the downtown and the beaches and, you know, the possibility of surfing or swimming or snorkeling or freediving or whatever that it's quite easy to kind of forget about your bike for a couple of days. So I think a lot of our tours are going to be like, you know, like a good solid morning of riding or a good solid evening of riding, and then like a lot of just exploration of the area, because it's unbelievably beautiful. I think one thing that a lot of people don't know about Baja is certainly something that I had no idea about, was like, I imagined this big flat peninsula, like this big sandbox with an ocean on each side, you know, and it's crazy mountainous and lush, and Todos Santos is basically like a palm oasis. Like when you go up in the hills above it and you look down, it's just palm trees. So there's a lot of shade and a lot of palms, and from like you, where you went, La Ventana, you might have noticed the cactus was so tall that you're actually riding in the shade.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
A lot of the time. I mean, the cactus forests exist. And so to me, it was like...
Right, that's what I was going to say.
It's not what I expected. I expected this big flat landscape that was kind of lame other than the beaches, you know, and the opposite is true. I mean, the beaches are super, super cool. And because of how narrow the peninsula is, it's just like all beaches. So the beaches are totally uncrowded. And then within that, you have these really mountainous zones. I mean, I've never flown down here. I've only driven down here. And like parts of it are like driving through Hawaii, you know, so it was really unexpected how like I'm looking out the window and it's green outside, you know, like I did not expect that coming to this far south, you know.
Yep. And depending where you are, I mean, the parts that I explored, it does look from a distance, you know, you see these peaks and it looks really rocky and desert-like, really dry. But then once you get onto the trails and you're kind of weaving in and out of these little canyons, and, you know, there's oases, which, you know, is really cool to see, like these spots where there is water like coming up, you know, to the ground level, and you've got these palms growing and it's really lush, like in this one little area, and you're kind of weaving in and out of those. Like, yeah, that's just super cool. Really different kind of riding.
It is. Yeah. I've got a group of friends down here. Actually, today they've been in town a couple of days, and I'm taking them to my favorite beach, which is Las Palmas Beach. And it's like you kind of have to know where it is because there's no signs to Las Palmas Beach. And you get there, and it's so unexpected. It's just this lush, there's like fresh water running down through, out of springs, and then you have palm trees growing, and you walk down there, and there's a freshwater river running into this ocean on this empty beach with wild horses running around, and it's just like,
wow,
oh my God, where am I? Like, this is like, it's an absolute craziness. Like, the funny thing is too, Jeff, is that I spent 3 months here last year. I've been here 2 months this year, and I feel like a total newbie, not just to the riding in the area, but even to town. Like, I'm discovering new restaurants, new places for live music all the time. I mean, the coffee shop I'm sitting in right now, John Paul Jones, the bassist for Led Zeppelin, played here last year.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, they have bands coming from all, like, really famous bands coming and playing in coffee shops in town. It's like, it's such a cool place that people just want to come here. And that's actually why I chose to stay here. I mean, like, I'd say that if you were just going one place just to ride your bike, like, La Ventana is probably the best built out right now. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have the feeling of the Mexican town that this does. I think it's more kind of a strip along the beach, you know. It's definitely mostly expats, whereas you come here and you kind of get this, you know, the kind of historic kind of like brick buildings and this sense of history and this sense of culture, and just a lot of like, you know, actual like, you know, influence from locals. And I think it's, for me, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, be careful. You're about to blow up your spot and it's going to be overrun with mountain bikers and not going to be the same.
Yes. Wait a minute. No, it totally sucks. Don't come here.
Yeah.
Plans have changed a little bit because, you know, we were going to do a tour in December, one in January, one in February. And so like that was our whole focus, was getting ready for those. And then we kind of scuttled all that. We have one in March. We'll see if that goes or not. My main concern was actually not, I just didn't want to bring COVID down here to the local people, because it's actually not that prevalent down here. And that was my main concern, was just bringing in people with how rampant COVID is in the U.S., you know. So my plan now is to just further ingratiate myself with the people of town, with the landowners, with the trail builders, with the riders. And so for me, once again, the COVID thing, you know, in its own strange, you know, twist of fate, has been kind of a bit of a blessing, because now I'm forced to just take my time, and rather than coming in here and trying to like capitalize on what they already have, I'm here to help grow what they have before I actually even bring people down. And so for me, it's been a really cool couple of months, and I'm here through the end of April. And I have other instructors teaching for me in Seattle in March and April, and I'll be back at the end of April to start teaching there. And then I'm hoping to go back to the Alps again in August. That's the plan right now. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, being here has been wonderful. It's kind of a blank slate. You know, it's this small town. There's so much open space, not just on the beaches, but in the mountains around. Most of the people who own the land, whether they're private landowners, developers, or whomever, are totally cool with, as long as you're responsible with what you're doing, and you get permission. They seem so far totally cool with the idea and excited about the idea of bringing mountain bikers here. And I think one of the fears of the locals here is that this could turn out like Cabo, you know, and Cabo is basically kind of like the Las Vegas of Baja, you know, and it's not really that popular with you know, the people who live here, obviously, because it doesn't always have the most positive influence, and it doesn't always give the best reflection of who Americans can be, or who you know, people from other countries can be. And so I'm excited to kind of make sure that to help in any way that I can, that this turns into more of like an outdoor enthusiast area, you know, for surfers, for mountain bikers, for things like that. And obviously that, you know, there is some cost there to the general Mexican culture, and I'm aware of that. But at the same time, to me, it seems much more positive than what could happen by being so close to Cabo, with the influence of people coming up this way and trying to turn it more into a Cabo type, you know, like party zone or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's still a quiet town. Like you know, you get people blaring the stereos on Main Street, that sort of thing every once in a while. But it's, you know, yeah, it'll get busy with like some tourists for an hour, and then all of a sudden it's just like totally empty again. And it's just a small town, and it's just a small, you know, beautiful Mexican town. I'm totally in love with this town. I've never actually felt this at home anywhere in my life.
Wow, that's cool. It's a powerful endorsement.
What
are your plans for Fluidride for 2021?
Plans are, you know, we've got a lot of new instructors, and they've been doing really well. Most of them were with us in 2020, so keeping them going with their private instruction, having them take over some of my group instruction when I'm out of town in March and April. So they've got that responsibility on their shoulders, and they've been rising to the occasion and doing a great job. So some of it is kind of growth in that direction, with the help of Linnea Rook, who's our COO. She's just helped us manage the business in a way that I've never been able to. I mean, she runs the business so much better than I was ever able to. So we're able to expand so much more rapidly. We're really excited about the online school, so that's a really big push for us. We're working really hard on that right now, and we both work crazy long hours. So that's one thing. Helping her with her Practice Like a Pro, helping her, which is her, you know, series of episodes that's on both on YouTube and on Fluidride Online, helping her achieve her goals there with her riding and her racing. So that's one of my goals for sure. And then having fun, and also getting back to Europe. I really hope I can go back to the French Alps this year, because I really, really missed it last year. So yeah, there's really the goal is just to continue doing what we do, to create more of a year-round outlet for it by having this zone down here. I mean, one of the cool things about this particular location, particularly for our West Coast clients, is that it's a direct flight. I mean, from Seattle, it's about a 3.5 or 4-hour flight, $35 to fly your bicycle down.
Wow.
You know, and then it's a 1-hour drive, you know, and we're going to do airport pickups and like really just jump on a plane, and, you know, and once COVID's more chill, like jump on a plane and 3.5 hours later, you're transported to a totally different place with great mountain biking, great beaches, and the best food I've ever eaten in my life. I mean, it's not what you think of when you think of Mexican food. You just have to come down and experience it. It's really amazing cuisine here, and fruits and vegetables will never taste the same anywhere else you go after coming back from here. So that's one of the coolest things for me, is that kind of the vision is kind of like being able to have Fluidride operate a little bit more year round by having a place where you have pretty much just guaranteed good weather. And the weather here is phenomenal. It's the cold season right now, and like the highs are like 79, 80 degrees. And so December and January, that's kind of like how it is, and it cools down at night. November's a little bit warmer. So I'm here in November, December, January, and then February, March, and April, and then it starts to warm up again end of February into March, and gets a little toastier in April. But it almost never rains here, and the trails aren't really dusty. Like, you can follow right behind somebody and you're not getting dusted. So it's really this unique opportunity to kind of give people a really great experience, pretty much guaranteed sunshine and guaranteed single track and guaranteed time on the beach, and all really very, very surprisingly accessible. One of the cool things too is, for a lot of people have the Alaska Airlines credit cards and have the frequent flyer miles, and with those it's $80 to fly round trip. Even if you buy your ticket, it's pretty easy to get a ticket, $200 each way, and then $35 for your bike. So it's accessible, it's affordable. It's affordable once you're downhill here. It's our least expensive tour that we offer. It's also our least advanced tour. Like, we have the opportunity here to teach riders who are fairly new to riding, whereas in the French Alps, you need to have quite a bit of experience to go on those trips. So it also provides that kind of gateway to people being able to go on a tour, kind of understand what it's about, and maybe prepare themselves for some of our more advanced tours as well. So yeah, just a whole variety of things and reasons that I'm down here. And I also just love the sunshine. I'm originally from South Africa, so I think in my genes somewhere was just kind of like, find the sun, find the sun.
Yeah. That all sounds amazing right now, especially for so many reasons. Yeah, I think we're all due for a Baja vacation.
Absolutely. Well, come join me, man. I'd love to have you down.
Yeah, thanks. Well, Simon, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and catch us up on what's going on, and to talk a little bit about mountain bike skills. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I look forward to next time. Great talking to you.
Well, you can learn more about Fluidride at fluidrideonline.com, and we'll have that link for you in the show notes as well. That's all I've got this week. I'll talk to you again next week.